After losing her parent in a tragic accident, Ijeoma thought she knew everything about her family. She had always believed she was an only child, and her parents had never given her any reason to doubt it. But just a month after their passing, Ijeoma found herself in the dusty attic of her family home, looking through old boxes of photos, hoping to feel close to them once more. She carefully opened one of her mother's old photo albums, flipping through the faded pictures, smiling at memories she thought she knew. But then her hand froze. There in her mother's handwriting was a note on a picture that changed everything. Amara and Ijeoma 2003. In the photo, she saw two little girls, identical from head to toe. One wore a red dress, the other a blue one, but they had the same hair, the same eyes, the same dimpled smile. Ijeoma's heart pounded as she stared at the picture. How could this be? She had grown up thinking she was the only child of her parents. They had never once mentioned she had a sister, let alone a twin. Unable to sleep that night, Ijeoma kept turning the photo over in her hands, feeling a mix of shock, excitement and confusion. She couldn't understand why her parents would keep something like this a secret. As the days passed, her mind couldn't let go of the picture or the idea she had a sister somewhere out there, but where? And why had her parents hidden the truth from her? Her heart racing, Ijeoma studied the photo, her mind struggling to piece it together. She had grown up as an only child. Her parents had never once mentioned the twin. She squinted at the picture, disbelief and curiosity building. Would they have hidden something so life-altering? And if truly she had a sister, where could she be? The photograph lingered in her thoughts for days, haunting her with questions. Unable to shake the feeling that a part of her family history had been buried, she finally sought out her auntie, Auntie Grace, her mother's sister, and the only family member she had left. When Ijeoma showed Auntie Grace the photograph, her aunt's expression turned pale, her gaze dropping as if she had seen a ghost. She whispered, "You weren't supposed to know." "What does that mean, Auntie? Why didn't anyone tell me?" Ijeoma's voice was barely a whisper, struggling to grasp what this meant for her life. Auntie Grace hesitated, glancing over her shadow, almost as if someone might be listening. "It was complicated, dangerous even. There were people who didn't want you two together." Ijeoma felt her pulse quicken. But why? Where is she? Her voice cracked with a mixture of confusion and determination. Auntie Grace sighed, her face lined with sorrow. "I don't know. I tried to find her once, but it was impossible. After you were born, someone powerful arranged for her to be taken. Your parents kept it from you to protect you." The explanation only left Ijeoma more resolute. She couldn't ignore this revelation about her family. She wanted answers, but she knew she couldn't do it alone. She reached out to Jonah, an old acquaintance and private investigator with a knack for digging up buried truths. When Jonah saw the photograph, he didn't ask questions. The intensity in Ijeoma's eyes was enough. He could see how much this meant to her and agreed to take the case. He cautioned her, "Finding out the truth might mean uncovering things you are not ready for. Are you sure about this?" Ijeoma nodded. Over the next few weeks, Jonah dived into her family's history, scouring through hospital records, birth certificates and adoption files. His research led him to an unsettling name, Alhaji Sule, a man known for facilitating secret adoptions, someone who could make things disappear or reappear as he pleased for a price. Jonah discovered that Alhaji Sule had been paid a large sum around the time of the twins' birth, likely to orchestrate an adoption. But finding Alhaji himself was a challenge. He had vanished years ago. However, Jonah managed to track down a former associate of Alhaji's, an older woman named Mama Nkechi, who had been involved in many of his cases. Mama Nkechi remembered Alhaji well. She had spoken in a low, cautious voice, describing how he had once bragged about handling a pair of twins for business. She revealed that Alhaji had believed he was offering each twin a unique opportunity by placing them in different worlds, one in privilege and the other in obscurity. She vaguely remembered that the twin, Amara, might have been taken to a small orphanage outside Lagos before being adopted. The information was limited and vague, but it was the only lead they had. Fueled by a growing desire to find her sister, Ijeoma convinced Jonah to take her to the orphanage. Upon arrival, they were met with crumbling records and faded files, one of them damaged beyond use. They were nearly ready to give up when an elderly caretaker, who had been working there for decades, recalled a young girl named Amara, who had stayed there briefly. She described the girl as quiet, with a sadness in her eye that she couldn't forget. The caretaker remembered that Amara had been taken away in the dead of night by a man who claimed to be a family friend. This small fragment of information only fueled Ijeoma's resolve. It was a faint trail, but she couldn't abandon it. Then one day, Ijeoma received a breakthrough. A woman from the rural village reached out, saying she knew a young girl named Amara, who bore a striking resemblance to Ijeoma. She claimed Amara had grown up guarded, as if carrying a weight from the past. The woman directed them to a cafe in a small town, where Amara worked part-time. The drive to the cafe was filled with tension. Jonah kept a steady focus on the road, glancing occasionally at Ijeoma, as if to check if she was still ready. Her mind raced with questions. If Amara was really her sister, would she want to meet her? Would she be open to knowing the family that had abandoned her? When they arrived at the cafe, Jonah parked a little distance away, scanning the environment. "Wait here," he instructed. "Let me make sure it's her." Jonah disappeared inside the cafe, while Ijeoma waited, her heart pounding. She watched through the window as he approached a young woman cleaning a table near the back. Jonah showed her the photo, and the young woman froze, her face a mix of surprise and confusion. After a few tense moments, Jonah gestured for Ijeoma to come in. She felt like her heart was in her throat as she walked inside. Her eyes locked onto Amara, and she was struck by the resemblance: the same eyes, the same face, and the same quiet intensity. But where Ijeoma had been raised with warmth and security, Amara's face held a guardedness, a look that she was used to fending for herself. They stood a few feet apart, studying each other in silence. Finally, Amara spoke, her voice laced with uncertainty. "Who are you?" Ijeoma held up the photograph, her voice shaking slightly. "I think I'm your sister. I only found out a month ago." Amara's face softened, her guarded expression wavering. She looked at the photo and then back at Ijeoma, taking a shaky breath. "A sister?" She whispered, the word unfamiliar, almost foreign to her. They sat down together, the initial tension melting into a fragile connection. Ijeoma explained everything: the accident, the attic, the photograph, and the search. Amara listened, her face unreadable, but her eyes shimmering with questions. When she finally spoke, her words were heavy. "I grew up being told that my family didn't want me, that I was left behind." She paused, her gaze distant. "I spent years wondering why, and now you are telling me it was all a lie?" Ijeoma's heart ached hearing this. "I can't imagine what you went through. I grew up never knowing you existed. I wish things had been different." They spoke for hours, sharing fragments of their separate lives, bridging the divide that had kept them apart. Amara opened up about her struggles, her moments of loneliness, and the resilience she had to build over the years. Ijeoma listened with empathy, realizing just how much had been taken from them both. After their meeting, Ijeoma convinced Amara to stay in touch, and over the next few weeks, they met regularly, each visit peeling back more layers of their shared past. However, Amara was insistent on finding the man who had orchestrated her separation from her family, the man who had shaped her life with his choices, Alhaji Sule. Jonah continued his search, and after weeks of investigating, he discovered that Alhaji was living under an alias in a wealthy neighborhood. Amara was determined to confront him, to demand answers for the life she had been forced into. The day they confronted him, the air was thick with tension. Jonah stayed back, letting the twins approach Alhaji's door. When he opened it, his eyes widened in recognition, fear creeping onto his face as he looked in the identical faces before him. Amara stepped forward, her voice steady but laced with anger. "Do you remember me?" Alhaji stammered, his gaze darting between them, trying to find an escape, but they cornered him, refusing to let him evade their question. Amara's voice trembled with years of suppressed pain as she demanded to know why he had separated them. while choosing to alter their lives. He tried to dismiss it as usual, but his voice was weak, his confidence shaking. For the first time, Alhaji was faced with consequences of his actions, confronted by the lives he had manipulated. Amara spoke with a fierce conviction, letting him know the suffering he had caused, the life he had stolen from her. She didn't hold back, her words cutting through his excuses. By the end, Alhaji was left speechless, his bravado crumbling under the weight of her truth. Leaving his house, Amara looked lighter, as though a burden had finally been lifted. She turned to Ijeoma, a faint smile breaking through. I think I'm ready now, ready to be a sister. They embraced, both feeling the start of something new, a bond that had been denied but was finally theirs to build. The journey had been painful, filled with betrayal and heartbreak, but together they had found strength in each other. The months that followed, the twins worked on building a relationship, healing the wounds of the past through shared memories and small gestures. They discovered a bond that transcended the years lost, and in the end, they learned that family was not just about blood. It was about the people who chose to stay, who fought to be together, no matter how many obstacles were thrown in their way.